Welcome to the next lesson. Earlier we stopped at the second method of separating the bubbles from the body, and I will be using for now this first method where we remeshed the original quad mesh into a triangular mesh, and we transfer the attributes as well as the groups that we created before, the primitive groups. So as you can see, we have 6 primitive groups and 1 class attribute. So this is the mesh we're going to be working with. So the next step would be creating more point groups, which will define which parts of the body are going to be controlled by forces in Vellum. So we're going to start with a simple group SOP, and I'm going to select all the tips of the legs. We'll be using the tips group for applying forces on those tips inside Vellum. This will allow us to move the legs separately. So let's do this. We're going to switch to point groups, and I'm going to call it GRP tips. Yeah, so I'm going to disable the base group and go into bounding regions, bounding sphere, and I'm going to scale it down so I can just select these tips. So we have 3 tips, 3 legs. I'm doing the sphere bounding box selection because it's a procedural way of keeping selections in the setup. So we selected the first one. So in case you change the topology or something changes in your setup, the model changes, you'll be able to still keep the groups, unless you really drastically change the model. So I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to keep the same name, and instead of replace existing, I'm going to be doing union existing, pressing enter, and moving the selection over to the next leg. So basically this new SOP, group SOP, is going to be adding to the existing selection with the same name. So for scaling, for scaling and positioning and changing parameters, I use the third mouse button, which is the mouse wheel. You click on it, and then you move the mouse left or right, depending on what you want to do. So this is when I move it to the right, it increases the parameters at the same time because it's a vector value with 3 axes. Same with the center. If I want to change it at the same time. If you want to change one, you just third mouse click in one of these fields, and you can move it separately. I'm going to duplicate again this group operator and move it over to the third leg. I want to roughly position it so it just captures the tip of the leg. So this is enough. What I'm going to do now, just so I don't want to clutter this setup a lot, so I'm going to select all of these and navigate to this menu, and I'm going to go with the create subnet from selected. So it's going to be one single node. I'm going to call it groups and go inside. Press L. This is going to lay out everything properly. So we're going to continue doing selections inside of this this subnet. So yeah, next one is going to be another tip selection, but with less vertices, because what I want to do is apply the force on each of these selections on each leg, but I want the legs to attach with less vertices. So basically I want to apply the force to a bigger area, but attach these legs on contact with only the tip of this selection. So we're going to recreate the same kind of we're going to duplicate all of these guys, and I'm going to rename this to attach. I'm going to add a suffix at the end called attach. So I'm going to just decrease the size of this selection, so we're going to have really the tip of the leg or arm. It depends. I don't know if it's an arm or it's a leg. The only drawback of this bounding region, bounding sphere or box, is the lack of rotation, because sometimes I really want to rotate this in space, and you cannot do this because you only have size and center. But you can do the same kind of selection with an object, with a sphere that you can rotate and do whatever you want. So if you take a sphere, you have rotation axis, like if you scale it like this and you want to rotate it, and then you can connect it to the group, and here you'll select a bounding object, So it kind of replaces that functionality, that missing functionality. But yeah, I'll be using, in this case, it's not a big concern for me. So I'm going to be using the bounding sphere as before. So yeah, just decrease, like make the area smaller here, and I'm going to copy this name and do this for all the 3 groups. Do the same with all of the legs. Make it smaller. So this is going to be the area that is going to attach to the ground once the arm is kind of moved in space, pushed into the front of the this creature, and then once the leg falls onto the ground, we're going to time it properly so it attaches to the ground and pulls itself towards that point. So the timing in the system is going to be really critical, because even a frame or two of will play a big role in the movement and in the tempo of the locomotion of this creature. So yeah, we're going to do the same with the third leg. So if sometimes you're offset in space like this, you space G or space H, yeah, space G sometimes it works properly. So it kind of centers the object in the middle of the screen. So this is all right, I think. Yeah. So now I don't want to have all these vertices to attach to the ground. So I'm gonna kind of introduce some noise in this or some randomness in this selection. So I'll disable the bounding groups and keep by random chance, and increase to 80%. And instead of union with existing, I'm gonna subtract from existing. So basically, you have this selection, and this group operator is going to introduce a selection by random chance. So it's going to select 80% of all the vertices in the geo and subtract them from the selection that we have already. So this is what's going to happen. So we're left with 20% of these vertices. This is enough for me. Next is going to be the legs selection. It's going to be a primitive group. I'm going to leave it as a primitive group. So group, I'm going to clone this just so we don't really recreate any ops again. I'm going to call it group legs, and disable the random chance, go into the base group and enable, and it's going to be a primitive attribute, replace existing, and I want to select all the legs that we've created. I mean, add all the leg groups into this. So I'll select one of the leg groups and put a wildcard here, which is going to be an asterisk. So all the groups that have this prefix will be added into this legs group. It's going to be a primitive attribute, primitive group. I'm creating all of these groups. You'll see why I'm doing this later on, but it's mostly like a preparation for the simulation. We're going to use a lot of groups here because we're controlling separate parts of the body with different forces. Also, yeah, I'm going to also promote my my groups, some of the groups. So I'm going to promote the group legs and group bubbles 2 points. All right, and then what happens here, if you notice, we have 2 groups that are kind of blending, merging together, and we don't want this because I will apply inflating forces to the bubbles, and in case there's some shared vertices in both groups, the legs are going to some of the vertices of the leg group are going to be inflating along with the bubbles, and this is something that I don't want. So we're going to do a Boolean operation between the groups, which is going to help us with fixing this problem. I ran into this problem when I was simulating, so I'm doing it now earlier before the simulation. So this is kind of a precaution before the simulation. We're going to add a group combine, which is a kind of a Boolean operation between the groups. So basically, you do group legs. We're going to use point groups. So group legs equals group legs. This is going to be our first group in both of these fields, and I'm going to subtract the group bubbles. And if you notice what happens here, so if you remove the group bubbles, you see there was like a bunch of shared vertices between the bubbles and the leg group, and once we add the group bubbles into this Boolean operation, some of the vertices are going to disappear from the group legs. So here you go. We don't have any shared vertices, so we're not going to have any issues later on. Okay, so yeah, now I'm going to also create a group for the bottom of the creature. it's going to be a point, like a point group. We're going to disable the base group, enable bounding regions, bounding sphere, initialize to input bounds. This is a great button actually. I don't know why it wasn't added to the delete SOP, but it's a really great button just to fit your kind of sphere or selection box to the existing geo, to the bounds of the existing geo. So I use it all the time. So this is a good starting point for our selection. And sometimes the geometry is huge and you want to make a quick selection there. So yeah, I'm gonna resize this. I want to select here the bottom of my creature, because we're going to create some constraints. So sometimes I create groups even if I don't use them, but it depends on the scenario. So you see it has some kind of a zombie skin underneath. I was sculpting this creature with when I was adding a detail, I was using some brushes for zombies that I found on internet. So it added a lot of realism to the body of this creature. So yeah, we created this group, something like this. I'm gonna call it group bottom. It's going to be a point group, and let's do a group expression. Either a group expression or again a group operator. We can do it in two ways. So I'm gonna disable this. I duplicated this node. We're gonna use the group bottom, subtract from existing, and with the random chance you can do this, like subtract a bunch of points, a percentage of the points from the existing selection, or you can do the group expression, which is also a great way to, but it requires some VFX. So we're putting the name of the group we want to subtract from, or we want to make a selection to, and we're going to use one of these presets. You see the 30% chance, and we'll change the group type to points, and let's say 0, 1, and instead of replace, we're going to intersect with existing. So this is one of the methods that I used before, but now the group operator has the random chance field here, and you can really dial in a percentage of the points you want to subtract or add, or whatever you want to do. So let's say 90%, something like this, and connect it to the output. Also, I want to do a selection of the tail ends, because you see the tails of the Joey's tails are like, there's like 6 of them, and I want to select this bunch here because we're going to attach the tail to the ground, and they're going to have some sliding attachment constraints attached to geometry constraints inside Velm. So let's create another one. It's going to be groups. So I'm going to call it the GRP tail ends. It's going to be a point group. Disable the base group, group bounding regions, bounding box, initialize to bounds, and we're going to move this here. Yeah, so this is going to be a nice selection of the tails. Yeah, and also I'm going to do the same as with the group bottom. I don't want all these vertices to be participating in the simulation when I do attachment constraints, because although all the new constraints you create in Vellum, they're going to add simulation time, because you're basically creating new primitives, new hidden primitives that are there during simulation of each frame, and it's going to kind of slow down your simulation. I want just a select few vertices from this group to be attached to the ground, so I'm going to duplicate this group bottom node. I'll rename it as group tail ends, and also subtract from existing, and maybe make it like 75, let's say. So if you notice this this network box, the subnet, I mean, contains an output node, which means that whatever you have selected in this subnet, the output is going to be always what you connected last to this output node. So it doesn't really matter where you are, like in this flow where you have the blue selection checked. It's always going to be using any node that is connected to this output as a final kind of output. Yeah, so we're done with the groups now. We're going to be continuing with the with the splitting of our body parts, and creating the blinking attributes as I was describing earlier. So see you in the next one.